I just got back from Japan a couple of days ago. It was my first time over there. We started in Tokyo and we had 5 days in Tokyo. I'd argue you could do way more than that. It's one of the biggest cities I've ever been to, and it's just pure carnage from the moment that you arrive, but it's really, really great. The biggest tip I can give with Tokyo is to try not to do too much in each day. I think a slight mistake I made was that I tried to do too many areas. Although they're very close, each area is absolutely massive and it's its own city, so there's lots and lots to do. The biggest takeaway from my time in Japan is every single place that you go, the food is absolutely incredible. Probably one of my favorite meals was in a place called Roppongi, which is not too far from Ginza in Tokyo. We went to a restaurant called Gonpachi. It's actually the restaurant they used in the film Kill Bill, so there's like a big fight scene in Kill Bill, and they didn't actually shoot it in the restaurant, but the restaurant itself was kind of used for the set, and that's where they kind of filmed it from. The food was absolutely amazing. We just ordered lots of different sharing plates and everything was delicious, and then partway through the meal they started playing music and there was like people jumping around, and it's a bit more of a show. It is one of the places I managed to pre-book before I went to Japan, which is a big thing. Lots of people tell you to pre-book, but you actually just have to just turn up and queue. But I could pre-book a seat there and it was well worth the wait. Tokyo is so big that there's lots of different things that were highlights for me. I've already mentioned the food. It's also really famous for vintage shopping now as well, so there's a massive culture of shopping over there, and there is loads of different areas that you can go to. One of my favorite shopping areas was an area called Shimokitazawa, which was really amazing, and there was just like thrift shops absolutely everywhere. You just walked from street to street and there was just places everywhere selling like massive brands, lots of stuff imported from America, from Europe, and it was just amazing. So I think you definitely need to go with an empty case and take way less than you normally would for any time of holiday. I think one thing that is definitely a bit more difficult with Tokyo is it's not difficult to get around, it's difficult to get yourself out of a station. Every single train station is the size of King's Cross, and they have about 15 exits, and you end up going out of one just to get up on the land to get some signal, and then you find out you need to be the complete other side of the train station. But after a few days you kind of get your head around it and it gets much easier to navigate. The system is just so efficient. There are no signalling errors, there are no delayed trains, everything runs when it tells you it's going to, and it's really simple and easy to get around when you're there. I think that's probably main parts of Tokyo that I would kind of recommend definitely. Our 5 days in there were pretty full on, and we left to go to Kyoto after that, so we did our first Shinkansen. You can pre-book a seat or you can go unreserved on lots of trains, which was really easy to do, but it's just an experience in itself going on a Shinkansen and traveling all that way. You're traveling at like 200 kilometers an hour, and it's so smooth, so beautiful and picturesque, and you just get to watch the world go by while having some food, having some drinks and stuff, which is really cool. Kyoto was probably my favorite out of everywhere that I went. It is a little bit more traditional, and it's still quite a big city, but I would say that the area that most of the stuff that you want to do is relatively easy to do and quite walkable. Again, loads of amazing shopping. There's temples all over the place, and so one of the big things that lots of people do when they go there is you get this little booklet for the temples, and they do what's called like a goshuin, which is kind of like a little signature stamp from each of the temples, so you go around and collect them. They're beautifully hand drawn, they've got stamps behind them, and it's a really big thing that lots of people do. Kyoto offers the opportunity to do that in abundance. They are literally absolutely everywhere. If you're lucky enough, this is one of the places where you can still spot geishas walking around as well, like traditional geishas. We were lucky enough, we were just walking back one evening from dinner and just happened to be walking around and managed to see 2 geishas just walking straight past us. We were all a bit like, which was a really amazing experience. It's such an amazing place that still has lots of its original history and culture is still very much there and there to see, which I think is just absolutely beautiful. One thing we did do, which was a trip just outside of Kyoto, was we went to a place called Nara. Nara's a town and a big park that you go to, and there's just deer walking around everywhere, and as you go in there's lots of little stalls that are kind of selling food for the deer. You just hand feed them while you're walking around the park. At times it might get a little bit overwhelming when there's about 12 of them trying to fight for your biscuits, but it's pretty amazing. The park is huge, you could spend hours and hours there, but you have to be quite selective with Japan because there's so much to do, but there's plenty of temples to go and see. There's little museums and things within the park and stuff. So it was just a really beautiful stop, and I think an absolute must on any itinerary. From Kyoto, we then had 2 nights in Hiroshima. I actually feel like Hiroshima's really undersold as a destination. I think it was absolutely amazing. I really loved it. A lot more walkable, and there's lots of sites to go and see from where the A-bomb dropped, so there's loads of stuff to see from all of the disasters that have happened. They've made it into a really beautiful area where there's water features to see. There's like a big remembrance area for all of the people that unfortunately died in the attack. It's like a great place to learn a lot more about the history of some of the maybe the sadder parts of history that have happened, but a really interesting place to go and see as well. One of the big things that we did from there was go over to Miyajima, which is definitely one of the most photographed places in all of Japan. It's quite famous for the floating torii gate, which is kind of out in the ocean. You actually have to do a train and then a ferry across, so there's lots of different types of transport to get there, but it is well worth the journey. It's just a beautiful, picturesque island. It's really famous for oysters, so you can get like baked oysters, tempura oysters, you can get oysters gratin with cheese and garlic, and they're thrown on a grill, and they are literally pulling them out of the ocean, chucking them in a restaurant and then cooking them there for you. I was quite surprised at how big it was as well. There is way more to do than just go and see a torii gate in the ocean, so it's just a really beautiful place to walk around. There's a really amazing temple. It's got like a really big pagoda at the top, which gives you beautiful views down to the ocean, so just a great place to spend the day and do a bit more exploring on somewhere really close by to Hiroshima. With the transport being so frequent and so easy, every time a ferry departs, you get there, you walk to the station, the train departs to get you back to where you wanted to go, and things just work. Like, it's just such an amazing place to go. After Hiroshima, we went up and had 3 nights in Osaka. Osaka's known as the belly of Japan, so it's really famous for its food, and there's just like street food absolutely everywhere. So there's like yakitori sticks, which are cooked on the grill. There'll be like chicken skin, quail's eggs, and you can have like chicken breast, beef, loads of different amazing foods that's around. Every city itself has its own kind of little bit to it, but Osaka, I'm a massive foodie and it's always a huge part of my holidays, so I definitely would say stop in Osaka and try and get some street food. I tried as much as I possibly could while I was there, so I think that's a good one. It's also famous for takoyaki, which is like these little octopus balls, kind of like a pancake filled with octopus. They have like sweet sauce over the top, and then there's like these tuna flakes over it, which are really cool, so it's definitely one to try while you're in the area. One of the big things that we did there was we went to Universal Studios in Japan. It was like a week before Halloween. It was absolute carnage when you got in there, like everything was really busy, but we were lucky enough we had booked fast passes before we went, and that would be 100% well worth it. It is a little bit more money, but they give you timed entrances into certain areas and then also a time to go on the ride, so it's definitely well worth the expense. It's also the first place where they've built Super Nintendo World. It's just like an absolute haven for anybody that loves games. There's a whole area built for Mario. It's like everything is an animation. There's like 3 rides in there that you can do. There's loads of mini games that you can complete. You definitely need a full day because it's just so busy that there's just so much going on. From there, we stopped in Hakone. So Hakone is between Osaka and Tokyo, in a place where everybody stops to do a ryokan. We stayed at one called Ora Tachibana, which is really beautiful, and one of our featured hotels as well. It's very traditional, so you can have your bed set up as a proper futon on the floor, but you have like a little sitting area with a sliding door that overlooks the mountains. They have different pools that you can go in, so there's natural pools that you can go in. You can also book the private ones up on the rooftop. You get this like private bath. It is ridiculously hot, but it is amazing just to sit there, look out and look at the mountains, and well worth it. I think in the end it cost us about £30 and you got 45 minutes. After a pretty hectic time in Japan, it was really nice to just take some time to relax, sit in the hot pools, and then just enjoy a bit of the time there. The main reason people go to Hakone is to go and do Mount Fuji, and there was cable cars, there was funicular rail, there was train journeys, there was loads of different ways to get there. We finally got onto the cable car to go over to the mountain. All of my pictures are basically just a thick layer of fog and you can't see anything outside of the cable car at all. I think when we looked, the probability was about 20% chance of seeing it. Maybe if you go a little bit later, so into November and then into the early part of the year, you might get lucky enough to see it. We were at the end of October, so there was a chance that it was going to be clearer already, but we just got unlucky on the day. So I think if you did have 2 days, you maybe could react to it and kind of get out there if it's clear the first day that you get there. We weren't lucky enough to see any of Fuji, but it was still well worth the journey.